I think the first one I like it. That doesn't necessarily bring me back to home because I only heard that much later, much later. Decades later. I thought that the Gord's Gold was his only version, and that's the one that I've had on my own mixtapes and my own just listening pleasure. Yeah, yeah. The first one I like, but it's raw. It's like a lot rawer, and I think that by the time that he did the Gord's Gold one, he kind of found Gordon Lightfoot. That's him. And yeah, I love it. I love it. I initially thought I like that because it's the first song that came to my mind whenever I think of the word homesick. But it might be the same song like Leaving on a Jet Plane that a lot of other people pick too. Like you say, what song makes you homesick? And maybe it's one of those two songs. I don't know. Maybe it just shows a generational thing too. But that's okay. I think that on a mixtape, you need, if that is the case, you need those songs anyways. So be it.
My bandmate in Doomsday Prophet and season 1 guest Brian Reed and I first met while interning at Yep Rock Records in the summer of 2007. I was entering data at the time, and he told me to listen to this band, one of his favorite local punk bands based in Durham, North Carolina. That band was Red Collar, a band that often drew comparisons to the righteousness of The Clash and the raw power of Fugazi. I lost count of how many times I saw Red Collar play while they were active, but they were the kind of band that even one show was enough to leave a lasting impression. Their live shows were one of those you had to be there kind of things. I can't describe the feeling. There was life, there was hope, there was anger, there was just pure anthemic rock and roll. Words won't do it justice, so here's a little taste for your ears.
Got my bachelor's, got my master's, I got my doctorate, yes, I'm a go-getter. Cocaine, caviar, baby, yes, I'm bona fide. Old man says, are you a Scotsman? When I was young, I used to buy the cake. New face, fucking rat race. 30 years in my briefcase. So get your hands up. Don't keep your mouth shut. Forget the president. I'll break that shit up.
That clip was from Hands Up off of their first LP, Pilgrim. You can hear the full song in the show notes at letsmixtape.com, and definitely give a listen to Pilgrim and their subsequent LP, appropriately titled Welcome Home. The first time I saw them live was for a mini festival that I put together for my college radio station, featuring bands from the surrounding area. That's also the first time I met Jason Kutchma. Jay is the kind of person that you meet once and never forget. He wears these gold spray-painted boots with spurs attached. Sometimes he's wearing bright white denim pants. But even more memorable is how truly interested he is in making the people he interacts with feel welcome. After that show, and after meeting Jay, I became incredibly invested in the music scene in the Triangle. That's Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill for y'all outside the state of North Carolina. The Triangle music scene is one you'll hear me talk a lot about throughout this season, because it's one of the primary reasons that after college, I decided to put down permanent roots in Durham. In fact, Jay was the officiant of my wedding. When I asked him for a photo that he wanted to use on the website for this episode, he pointed me to one from that day. His band after Red Collar was JKutchma and The Five Fifths, a bit of a different sound than Red Collar, leaning more into folk and Americana, but still the same Jason at the microphone. Once again, here's a taste.
I gotta get home. I got a tempo to set. Four horsemen. And I got a 4 milk horse up on China Fire. He on his black horse. I'll just have to give him wine. You can all have wine. Get some Beaujolais, you know.
Recently, Jason experienced some serious pain in his left hand, which made playing guitar quite challenging, and he had to change his approach to songwriting, which is showcased in his album from last year, Wishing Well, and from which I'll play a full track at the end of this episode. Jay and his wife Beth, who works for an amazing organization called Carolina for Kibera, working to improve public health and economic prosperity in informal settlements in Kenya, moved away from North Carolina not too long after our wedding. They've lived in several states since and currently reside on the West Coast. Given that and his experience touring all around the United States, both with a band and solo, I thought he would have an interesting perspective on Season 2's topic, homesick. So, without further ado, let's make a mixtape. Jason, thank you so much for joining me on Season 2 of Let's Make a Mixtape. When I came up with the prompt for Season 2, you were definitely one of the first people that came to mind because I figured you would have a very interesting perspective when it comes to a song that reminds you of home. I mean, for me, honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, your music in general has this tie for me that almost reminds me of home, or the vague concept of what home even is, as I feel like you've explored to some degree throughout the breadth of your catalog. So I wanted to ask you, what's a song that reminds you of home? And you came up with Early Morning Rain by Gordon Lightfoot. Why does this song remind you of home?
I think the first time I heard it, I was pretty young. The version that I heard, though, was Elvis's version, which I don't consider very good. I don't think his deliveries, he's done better, and I think the band that he had at the time definitely is a great band. But I don't really like the arrangement or treatment that they did on it. And it wasn't until years later that I heard the Gordon Lightfoot version of it. And I think, like a lot of times, whenever you hear something, whenever you're young and older, you hear a different version, you think, oh, wow, Gordon Lightfoot covered Elvis. Not really getting, whenever you're a teenager, you just, or whatever, the late teens, not really realizing that Gordon Lightfoot was the original writer of it. And then it hit me. I mean, I think the first time I heard him sing that song, it really crushed me. And it might be that I thought of, the Elvis version, and it was probably on my mom's record that I heard it, I'm assuming. But it's a song that is many people. It wouldn't be a unique song for me to choose. This is making you homesick. But sometimes I think that, that I need that, that maybe non-specificity. And it's also, it not only makes me homesick, or sick for my home, my actual home in Pennsylvania, but it also makes me homesick to make that a place like that for somebody else in a really strange kind of way. The way that he feels about his home is also the way I feel about my home. And I start to think, I hope I'm doing that for somebody else.
Elaborate on that. What you hope for your home, or how you see your home reflected in it.
That when another person is away from it, you make a life that is, or a place that makes them feel unique and wanted and special.
And so what is home to you? A place or an idea, or how do you see home?
I think that's maybe why the song is it has this unique effect to me, because it does have the home of my parents, and now it's the home of my sister and parents, and it makes me think of that. But then it also has the idea that at some point that's going to be gone, and that then there's the idea um, of no matter where I am, somebody can find that within me. It doesn't have to be a specific place, but they could. I just saw it was a nice time. Maybe this will help. But just a few weeks ago, I really had the great fortune of seeing Rob and Elaney from Beloved Binge, and they were in the Pacific Northwest, and they were traveling down the coast, and they stopped in and saw us and stayed for the night, and it was incredible. It was such a nice time. I haven't had a conversation with somebody like that about North Carolina. So it's not Pennsylvania. It's a different kind of home, um, and we were in North Carolina for 20 years, and so that is there's certain elements of it that that I still have there, but it's always with a person. Cities change so much, and especially in the Triangle, that it's if I start thinking, oh, I'm going to get to North Carolina and I'm going to go see this and that and the other thing, and you get there and it's gone. Oh my God. I mean, that's what an awful feeling. And so then home has, become in a way because of the changes that towns go through. Home is more like how Rob and Elaney made me feel about a certain time in my life, and that was our home then. That was our first real venture into trying to not just make something unique for us, but to make others feel unique and special, and they certainly did with me.
So the home is almost there's an element of the physicality, the physical structure of a house that you've spent your life with, you have family memories tied to, but then there's also kind of the just the transient evolution of relationships throughout time that have reflected that similar feeling of comfort in within yourself, like you get from a childhood home, but that comfort, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of identity carried out and reflected throughout relationships with other people that you've built in other physical locations, but that relationship has evolved and maintained throughout beyond transcended the physicality of the place. Is that
That's right. And this is, I think, our fifth state that we've, in 25 years, I guess, and whenever I think of what my parents did for me, or what my sister and brother did for me, and or what was done to me in or what other people did for me in North Carolina, and it whenever I have that feeling, anytime I get to a new place, it does give me motivation to try and find that. And if I can't find it, I know that I have to try and create it, because eventually you get to be a certain age where you realize, oh man, all the people that did the reason I had this great experience was because it was somebody that was older, that had no investment to solely just to create community or do something really unique and cool. And that becomes something I really took to my heart. And as you become older, unfortunately, you start to get less and less, energy to and gumption to do these things, but it's still there to try and get that, try and create it, and try and find it.
so with the last couple places that you've lived, or specifically where you are now, how have you tried to have you found that sense of home, or reflection of that sense of home, or have you felt the need to create it where you currently are? And I guess, how are you creating that?
uh Not yet, but we've only been here a year, which is a pretty short time, and so I haven't found it. But I got into a conversation with somebody that had said, um, you know, uh, you're a pretty outgoing fella, and I am. But in most cases, whenever I don't know somebody, I'm a bit of a wallflower. I just stick to myself, at the bar or whatever, at the show, and I don't really glad hand and try and meet people that way. The only way that I really met people was, like most people, through work. My work just happens to be music, where people come up to you afterwards and introduce themselves, and so it's a lot easier making friends. And I haven't I and that's been kind of the case so far. Is I've met maybe two handfuls of people right away, and it's all because of music. Now, is that feeling there yet? No, but that's okay. I don't think I felt my home was my home in Pennsylvania. The feelings that I'm talking about to you until I left. That's whenever I realized that, oh man, like that's, it was just a kid, and it just, a pissy teenager, all right, that just couldn't wait to get out of there. And then you get out of there and you're like, oh my God, what they did for me and to me. And so that quite hasn't quite developed, but that just takes time.
So is Early Morning Rain almost like a transport for you? So if you listen to that song, does that almost take you back to that feeling of home after you had left, that take you back in a
Yeah,
sense?
yes.
Yeah.
And I haven't listened to it in maybe at least a year. And so I wanted to listen to it again, and I started crying almost immediately. And he's so his it's a really, from a craft standpoint, I think it's a really well written song. But you could really tell in his voice that there is some strong there's there's longing, but it's not weak. He's not. It's like he sounds so sure of himself. Like it's not. He's not pandering or anything. He has something quality to the voice there's some real strength there. And so it's in how in what he's saying, I guess, or it is just has this longing that I haven't had that experience in a lot of other songs. And but I think it's fairly autobiographical though too. I don't think it's that's what he did whenever he moved. Uh, I think he moved away from Canada and he was living, I think, in California.
Yeah, and it looks like some of the background around the song was and this I should probably maybe dig in and add some post edit notes, but so I'm admittedly looking at Wikipedia right now. But he was in California, in Los Angeles, and when he was homesick, he'd go to the airport and watch on rainy days and watch the planes come in and out. And there was one day, I guess he had his very young child with him, his like 5-month-old baby, and put him in the crib and started writing the song, observing the planes taking off on the rainy days at the LA airport. So I think definitely some autobiographical elements, and I think that story, I feel like, lends itself to that authenticity that maybe is reflected in that recording and the lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. I love that one line. This old airport's got me down. It's no earthly good to me. Great line.
I love those lines that just really stop you, and you almost want to pause the record just to sit and let it kind of keep rotating in your head a little bit. Yeah,
I had the homesick feeling with other ones though. There was it was homesick, but it made me it had a very different way. But I was listening to a Hammer No More the Finger song, and man, it really it was a wonderful experience. And I recently so we moved, I had this immense trailer full of things that had followed me around the country, and some of it I don't know why I didn't throw it away or just get rid of it earlier, but I didn't. It's still stuck with me. And so one of them was this big box of like DVDs and then other DVDs that we had. And as I'm going through it, most of them have no interest in keeping, but some of them I do. I'm not a fan of the streaming movies. And whenever I do get to streaming movies, for maybe 15 minutes, you would think that life would have been like changed. We would be different because there's streaming service, and then you have like cable. Okay.
Yeah.
And my neighbor in Idaho would joke about this with cable, and he would flip through the channels, and 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 he said the difference between him and his wife is she gets so frustrated with him flipping through these channels, and he's an older fella, and he
Yeah.
said because, and this is just an old phrase, you may have heard it, but he said women want to know what's on, men always want to know what else is on. And so he would end up flipping through all these, channels. It was hilarious. Well, the streaming comes on, and you think it's going to, I'm going to know, I'm going to find something right away because you have access to, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. I keep on looking and looking. And
it makes
looking.
it worse. It makes it worse.
It really does.
Because you're not only, it's the equivalent of scrolling through cable TV channels on like Netflix, but then you've also got the equivalent of that on a Hulu, on Amazon Prime, on whatever. It's different dimensions of the streaming. They're like, well, I mean, this show on Netflix could be cool, but like, what else is going on Paramount Plus? Like,
right.
what am I missing out? What would I rather put and then so you, instead of spending that hour and a half watching something, you spend an hour and a half figuring out what the fuck to watch, and you end up just feeling sad.
Here's a $1 million idea. We're going to come up with a service, and we don't have any movies on it. Okay. It's an app, and it just has pictures of movies and the description, and that's it. Nothing else. You just flip through this, and we change it up every so often. We don't actually play the movies. It's just pictures of movies with the description. Nobody's going to watch them anyways. They're just going to keep on looking through these pictures. So it doesn't matter. They don't have to stream. Ooh, that was a good one. I love that movie. That was so good. But there's probably a better one. Not quite. And here's what's odd. So I have the DVDs that I've kept, and I keep them in a binder. And I look through the binder. I can find something almost immediately. The movies that I love, that I tell my wife Beth that I would be very sad. This is my, if the part of the move why we keep them is if I wouldn't be able to find this movie streaming, I would be very sad. If I couldn't find it, and so we keep them. And one of them, I haven't seen this movie in so long, but it was a documentary done by the boys in Rat Jackson called Beer Y'all.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And
wow.
So this is why we're having the DVD conversation. And I watched that, and I forgot about it. I really did forget.
I forgot about it until you literally just mentioned it.
Yes. It's been there, but I would bring it up with Beth every 6 months. Hey, we should watch Beer Y'all. We haven't seen Beer Y'all in forever. I can't remember what happens in Beer Y'all. Well, you know what happens in Beer Y'all, but at the end of it, I forgot it was a show that we played with Rat Jackson.
Yeah.
And it was to see that again, it hit me.
Yeah.
So it hit me, and I haven't had that. I've been going and going and going, and haven't had a chance to kind of stop and reflect a little bit and get some grounding.
Watching that and knowing, being sort of a part of coming up in that scene, in the local scene in that time, and kind of knowing everything that was going around, to me, that feels like that would remind me of that feeling of home that I had when I was in a part of that Durham local scene. Did you get those kind of nostalgic hits that you would get when listening to Gordon Lightfoot reflecting on your family home, your childhood home? Did you get that similar connection to that feeling of home from that point in time in that Durham scene?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was such a good feeling. It really was. It really was terrific. It was, it was great. It was really cool. Really,
there was something electric about those handfuls of years, that like 5-10 years, that just, I don't know. There was something about it, and it was magical. So I'm glad you dug that up.
I don't think I appreciated it at the time. But I've talked with other people, and they said, "Oh yeah, I absolutely knew." But they were coming. They were coming there, I think, for that. Like they were coming looking for that, as opposed to um, Beth and I. We were already there, and I was teaching, I think, and Beth was working at UNC, and so it was just, oh well, we should just do something, and I don't think that at the time it was just one step in front of the other, and I don't think that um, that just like now, I just didn't really stop and say, oh wow, this is really great. I just thought, just another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only now that I think, oh man, that was so great. Just like whenever I was talking about my home at the time, I was just a snotty teenager, couldn't wait to get out. Once I left, I thought, oh man, they were so great. They're still so great,
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. And the assumption, whenever we started to, bump around, it was very unique. I've traveled the country many, many times after those years,
Yeah.
and I don't think I realized just how unique that was. I wasn't as kind of worldly, for lack of a better term, to really realize how special that was.
So as you were in your various travels, you didn't encounter anything with that kind of that warmth, that feeling of the feeling of home. You didn't feel that, like when you, even as an outsider visiting a scene, you didn't feel like there was that kind of warmth that other people were experiencing. It's like feeling this place, this time in our scene is our collective musical home. You didn't run into that.
Actually, I found that I would see other people experiencing it in other scenes, and that's what made me realize that, oh, we have that there. It was just, to me, it was just that, like, it wasn't like it wasn't, don't want to seem like it was flippant, about it. It was just life. It was just a part of life. But whenever I would see this in what was unique to me about the Triangle, and I may be wrong about this, but it was a pretty big size scene with multifaceted. You would go to these other towns, and they would be much smaller, and they would only have, I don't know, a tenth of the size of bands, or even people that would come there, but they really latched onto it. As this is what they did. This is their thing, and yeah, it was something else, really something else.
It really was. And reflecting on it, like I don't feel like it doesn't it's the physical place still exists, but as you've said, I mean, things have changed, buildings have come and gone, people have come and gone, and the way that I feel about that era of this scene, as it it reminds me of home in a way, it doesn't feel like home anymore. If that makes sense. I've been living here for what, 12 years, 13 years, something like that, and it doesn't really feel as much as it doesn't feel like home as much as it used to, if that makes sense.
That time was the internet, but it was pre-cell phones, or right at the advent of smartphones, I should say, and it's much different of uh, just dynamic between people, and what they find important, and I don't know if I'm pretty sympathetic, but I don't know if I should be. It's like if you were a teenager in high school that went through the COVID years, and you were stuck at home, and you just found a way of other ways of reaching out and finding different people. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's better. I'm not really sure. When now that they go into college, and that now they don't really find a need to go out like I did or like you did when they're in their 20s, and they're okay in their dorm room, with the phone because they've kind of found some community online. Well, I'm not sure if I'm the one to say whether that's bad or good. It only seems really odd to me and you, maybe. Um, and I'm not sure if when it's 10 years on for them, now they're in their early 30s. I'm not sure if you ask them what makes them homesick. I don't know what feelings are going to arise from them. Maybe, maybe I don't know. I can't make that call, and I'm not certainly not going to denigrate it. It just seems to me to be a really uh, odd and strange um, situation, I guess that they're in. Just in the same way that they would maybe look at my life and say, "You did what? What did you do? That seems so weird. You did what? Whenever you were in your 20s, and God, that's so crazy."
You did what to a vacuum cleaner?
Right. Yeah, right. Right. You played in front of this many people and weren't afraid of dying, or what? I don't really know what's going to go through somebody's mind, but
Yeah.
imagine some kids may be thinking that, But yeah, I don't know. The older I get, the more I look, the more fond of those years have become for me. It's
Yeah.
I wish I was in North Carolina this weekend. Hammer No More of the Fingers has a new album coming out.
Yeah. So this will be airing sometime next year, but this is literally, I'm recording this and I'm going to go see them tonight.
A few weeks ago, beginning of November, beginning of October. It had to be earlier than that. Some point this year, I had to take Beth to the airport, and she in Portland, and she said, "Oh, and guess who's playing the night before I leave?" And I said, "Who?" And she said, "Bombadil." And so we went the night before. We stayed with her brother lives in that area, and so we stayed up there. And that night we went to see Bombadil, and we recognized there was other Durham people there in the crowd that are now living in the Pacific Northwest. And then they started pointing out, "Oh, this person's also from Durham. Oh, this person was there in Durham." And the feeling started to kind of happen again. Now, is it like it is homesickness, but it is also, nostalgia, in a way. And so, there's a difference, but that was music, or that scene in North Carolina. That's when that area started to feel like a home. And so maybe that's, as we're talking about music, it's not just bringing us back to like an earlier time, but until music uh, came into our life, that we started playing music and then going out and seeing other bands and then playing with other bands. That's when uh, Durham started to feel like a home to us, or Hillsborough started to feel like a home to us. Up until then, it was just, this is where we live, and this is where we work, and we had a home, and we had good connections with people. But I think that music is what really did make it feel like a place of belonging. And yeah, and yeah, right, yeah. And anytime I do see it now, it is nice to see. And I hope that I hope that in the near future I'm just able to do that for somebody else. It's yeah, I really hope I'm able to do that. But
By
you
by
know,
building and fostering some sort of scene in your area, is that?
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's always good. I don't know if that's always a good thing to have as is a kind of a, I don't know, like a goal necessarily. It's just people. I think that people need. I still believe, regardless of the availability of the world on our phones and the universe on our phone, I still believe that people need to go out at some point, and they need to interact, even if it's just to see other human beings. And as some and at my age, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that for like, you know, a 20-year-old, let alone a 30-year-old, to come out and do this, because then it becomes forced, that it's like, why aren't you liking my music, or, they don't know music, or whatever. I want to play out. I want to play out, and I want to be an alternative to a jukebox, and I want to be just an alternative to something else they won't be able to get anywhere else. And then if that's what they see because they've had a hard Friday night or Saturday night, and so and so is playing, we should go out, and all of a sudden they meet other people there. Man, that's terrific. I mean, it's whenever those kind of things happen, it's really wonderful. Um, but from the very selfish standpoint too, I also just need to play, and you hope that feeling happens for somebody. You hope that they start to affiliate what I'm doing with this place, and it makes them feel some connection to it, or I'm saying something to make them feel, have that connection to it. You hope.
Yeah. I know we've talked about this over the years, but I guess talk a little bit more about that feeling of the need to play and what you feel like drives that.
I really don't know. I mean, it may be, whenever I started playing accordion whenever I was, I think, 7. I'm from Pennsylvania, and so that's my brother played mandolin and I played accordion, and we would practice every day a half an hour, and then we would play for little family get-togethers, and I was really, and this is still problematic, but at the time I was glued to the page. I had to read the notes. I couldn't not look away, and um, and even now, it's very tough for me to memorize somebody else's songs. It takes a lot of work, um, and it's gone as soon as I learn a cover song for whatever, somebody's wedding or something. It's gone the next day. But my own song, they stay with you, I guess, and they're hard for me to kind of forget. And I'm not really sure why it just keeps on going. Just last night, I had a fairly early night, woke up at 2:30 in the morning, and that's been happening kind of, it's at least maybe once a week where I'm just awake. And then just the thoughts come in like, oh God, this, oh, what am I doing, here and there. And normally I'll get up and I'll just try and go to sleep somewhere else. I'll go to a couch, or, I'll just get up and I'll just try and stretch or just break it up. Just don't lie in bed staring at the ceiling. And for the first time, this is the first time, and this may be because Beth isn't here, my wife, but I decided it was 2:30 to just to go play music. And it was great. The thoughts didn't come into my head that normally do while I'm laying there, and I just played, and it was it was wonderful. I mean, it was a really great feeling, and I did it for, I don't know, 45 minutes or an hour, I guess, and went back to bed, and my mind was fairly clear, and I was able to sleep. It was, yeah.
It's wild to me how that works. It's like your brain's telling you something. It's got to get something out there, and once you finally are able to tackle what it wants you to, you can go to sleep. It's wild, and it's interesting that comes. I mean, it makes perfect sense that comes to form with you and music, specifically.
It's strange to me that I haven't thought of. I've always slept pretty soundly, but just the past 6 months, it hasn't been easy. And this, for whatever reason, this is the first time I tried this, something that should have been the first thing assumption that I did. But yeah, but it was wonderful. It was really, really great.
Is it something that that you have that will see a different iteration? Is it something that you're keeping, you're holding on to, or is it just kind of a spur of the moment? I'm going to get this music out here, just into the world, so that I can
I
get it out
know
and move on.
I've really got to start working on something, and not that I haven't been, but it's been in a much different context. I have, since I've moved here. I don't know if I've told you this, but I've been playing like for 3 hours for my sets. And so it started as like maybe 3 50-minute sets, and it's all my own music. And that's what's really, I didn't really real. I thought, oh my, it's maybe easy for somebody who said, yeah, you put out so and so albums, but I didn't really realize how kind of much I had, and and it's been a good feeling because it's still compelling for people to. And this is maybe by nature of being a singer songwriter, is you can open for people, but at least with me, when I was on the road, I would sometimes book shows at breweries, and they want you for 2 hours or 3 hours. So at the time, I was playing the same set 3 times, but now, I mean, I could do 3 hours and still probably have another hour's worth of material that I could do of original music. And lately, I found a couple people to play with, and they're people we never practice. I just tell them the key that the song's in, and they just play. And so it's really nice for me, because these songs that are maybe 15 years old, they all of a sudden, it's this real nice freshness, and I play off of them, and they definitely play off of me and then rhythms change, and I can extend the song, and I have the experience of really dragging something out, in a good way, and really letting loose that I've never done before with Red Collar, with the Five Fifths, or even Chasing 76. It was, well, this is how the song goes. This is it, and this is how we rehearsed it. And Red Collar, we had some improvisation, but it's not even remotely to the extent of what I'm doing now. And so it's that I will play one song. I had this experience with a guy in Pittsburgh. I played a song, he's playing along with me, and I think we played 3 songs in a row, because they were all in the key of G. And I would finish a song, but then you'd hear people start to clap, but then I just rolled into another song without ever really stopping. And it was a very, very fulfilling, it's been a very fulfilling thing to do. But I'm really getting hungry to have like that hour, as opposed to, and when you play a set like that for 3 hours, I know I'm conserving myself. In the beginning, I'm like, I just have to kind of, and I'm only doing it one day, maybe possibly twice a week, but never more than that. So I don't want to act like I'm, like Springsteen out there or anything. But you're just kind of sitting there, while people are having dinner, I guess, but trying to let loose. And but I'm really getting hungry to have just that like hour set, maybe hour and 15 set, that's just killer. I'm just go, and and really just punch people in the face over and over and over again. But that takes a lot of work for me to do, like to have that, and to know what I'm doing. And I've shifted to keyboards, which is, and that takes a lot of work in itself, just to not only play that, but to be able to play what I want to play, and to be able to sing on top of it takes a lot of work that I haven't put into it yet.
So have you shifted, when you're talking about the 3 hour set, are you talking about Five Fifths songs and Red Collar songs that you've kind of reinterpreted
Yes.
with the keyboards?
Yeah. This last week or 2 weeks ago was the first time I played keyboards. But yes, before that it was all on guitar, and it was Red Collar songs, 5/5 songs, Chasing 76 songs, and then the new stuff. And it is reinterpreted, and it depends on what kind of player you have next to you. And sometimes you don't. I mean, I didn't know what kind of player they were going to be until they start playing their first note, and then it's like, oh, this is like playing with cream. Like I got Jack Bruce here. And then I have to kind of readjust myself, and that's fun. It is fun. It can be really strange, because it's not going the way that I was necessarily thought it wanted to go, but then that's what makes it exciting, um, and then it broadens my thoughts of what my song should be.
So that the songs have really taken on a new life of their own. That's surprised you with how they've shaped up with the people that you're playing with.
Yeah. And there's these like two particular people that I've played with, and we've done, I think, 2 shows, maybe 3 shows together. And each one we've still never practiced, and we played a total of like 9 hours in front of people. But they're really good. They're lifers, and you realize with music, and this is the unfortunate part of music, that any other, if you look at, say, woodworking, or maybe literature. I'm not really, it's maybe anything. I mean, welding, bank managing. You start to really know what you're doing in your 40s after working at your profession for 20 years, like 20 years of craftsmanship. And then you've kind of got it, and then then in your like maybe late 30s to in your 40s is when you've got a hold, you really know it. And people are starting to look at you as being the authority. This is not how rock and roll works. Okay, once you reach the age of 25, it's over. The only people who really know rock and roll is people like 20, 27 at the most or under. And I get it. I understand it, that mentality. But then you do lose something. You lose some type of brashness and self-confidence. That's true. It's gone. All of a sudden you start to have some pretty deep self-reflection, and you're starting in your 30s, and definitely in your 40s, or you have a kid, or get married, or no matter what, you start to have this job that that kind of takes a lot from you. And so there's a lot of reasons for that. But for the people that are really kind of doing it, you start to really kind of hit your stride in your 40s. And unfortunately, people are like, you're still playing rock and roll? What are you, crazy? You should be doing jazz, or whatever. It doesn't, country, rock and roll, forget it, but these people are fantastic, and they've been doing it for a while, and they've toured quite a bit, and they live in, in the town that we do. And man, I tell them the key, and by the second chorus, they're doing harmonies. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. And then so since they're able to do harmonies and they're singing them, I'm able to kind of do the riffing off of that and come up with something new. And it's fun. It's fun to do that in front of people. And there've been times whenever we've screwed up, and we've had people come up to us after the gig saying, that was so tight, I can't believe it. How long have you guys been together? It's like the 3 hours that you just saw us. That's how long we've been together.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it's happened, but it's happened with other people, and the other iterations of this thing too. I've had these other 2 guys, and they're really, this is, I think, so cool and unique. But the first time I tried doing that in the area, I told the lady, I said, if you know a guitar player, that would really help me out, because it's 3 hours, and it's, I can extend my set. It could save my voice. I'm not a shredder. I never have been. And I can just let somebody fly a little bit, and it'll be much better in the long run. She said, I can do you one better. I know a guy, he's a guitar player, and his friend's a bass player. And that's tricky. because a guitar player doesn't have to know the song. They just really have to know the key. The bass player has to know the song. The drummer doesn't have to know the song. Keyboardist arguably doesn't have to know the song, but the bass player, you're really walking, a line there to try and but it's nice because you're following a little bit, the basses. So it's a little bit behind to make sure of the notes. And at this point, I don't have charts or anything. I just tell this guy it's in the key of G, and then I'm yelling or I'm saying in between lines of the verse, A minor, C, D, and afterwards I'm like, oh, what'd you think? And he said, that was cool, but I'd like to get maybe a practice in before the next time. Him and this other guy, this guitar player, they've been playing in bands since they were in their teenage years in California. And they're both in their 60s, I think, now. And they've played, like, I said, how long did you play together? They said, everything. We played like the kind of early rock and roll. And then whenever it was psychedelia, we played, that. And then we played even some new wave and punk like together. And then, now we're here together. We're retired, and it's really great. I mean, it's really a great thing to see that somebody that you can still continue, and still find it fulfilling, and it just puts a smile on their face and people in the crowd too. It's great.
That's amazing. I love that, and I love that you're starting to see your material come to life in different ways, and you're feeling that excitement around it. I'm very, very eager to hear what comes out of it, and I absolutely love Wishing Well. I think I love the wordplay there too.
Thanks.
On the title. Fantastic record. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, or anything about Gordon Lightfoot or Early Morning Rain we didn't touch on?
No, I think I think that we did a good job of doing Gord proud, maybe, I hope.
You can find Jason's music on Bandcamp. There will be links scattered throughout the transcript at letsmixtape.com. Huge thanks to Jason for taking the time to talk with me. As promised, here is Jason Kutchma with Too Much of a Good Thing off of Wishing Well. That's it for the first episode of Season 2. Tune in next week as we travel to Colombia as I talk with Balthazar Aguirre of the band Balthus about a song that reminds him of home. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and rate and all that jazz to help feed the algorithm. One more word about Jason before we go. He was the one who introduced me to the one and only Scotty Sandwich, who composed and recorded the intro and transition music that we use on this here show. Catch you next week.